Welcome to part 4 of this vSphere 5.1 upgrade tutorial video series. In this video we're going to be installing vCenter Update Manager and then using Update Manager to upgrade our ESXi host, which is currently on version 5, up to version 5.1. Now I previously didn't have Update Manager installed in my vCenter server, so I'm going to be running through the installation of setting up the database and setting up Update Manager from the beginning. However, if you do have Update Manager installed, as you'll see later on after we've set up our database and we begin the Update Manager wizard, in the first one or two screens it's going to detect that you've previously had Update Manager installed and it's going to prompt you to upgrade. So as I said before, this tutorial is going to run through a fresh installation of Update Manager, and with that what we need to do first up is to create ourselves a Update Manager database. So I'm just on my SQL server here and I've got the SQL Server Management Studio open. So I'm just going to right click on databases and I'm going to create myself a new database for our Update Manager. And I'm going to call it vim_um for Update Manager DB and click OK. Now I'm going to use my vCenter service account to give access to that Update Manager database. So I'm just going to go into the properties of that account and I'm going to go to user mapping and I'll select the new database that we've just created here, vim_umdb, and I'm actually going to give it DB owner access. And with that I'll click OK and flip the screen back over to our vCenter server. Now in our vCenter server we need to set up a 32-bit ODBC connection back through to our SQL server. To do an ODBC 32-bit connection, we need to actually not use the icon here or the icon in administrative tools that is presented in the start menu. We need to actually browse into c:/windows/syswow64. Now in here we're going to go down to ODBC ad32.exe and I want to run this as my vCenter service account. So I'm holding down Shift on the keyboard, and while I hold down Shift I'm going to click on the mouse and select Run as different user. In the credentials box I'll type in vCenter service and my password, and as you can see it's already going to be authenticating against my domain called VMLab, so I'll click OK. And I'll go to System DSN, and as you can see I've got a previous 32-bit VMware SRM DSN in here at the moment, so I'm going to click Add and I'm going to scroll down and select SQL Server Native Client 10, Finish. For the name I'm going to type VMware_um for Update Manager, and for server SQL1 and click Next. Now I'm going to be using integrated Windows authentication here. I'll click Next and I'm just going to click Change the default database to, and drop down the menu and select our Update Manager database, and I'll click Next. And I don't want to add any settings here, so let me click Finish. Now let's test our data source to make sure the connection is successful, and it comes back telling us test completed successfully, so we're good to use this DSN. So I'll click OK, OK and OK, and close this window. Just make sure that you've got your vCenter installer open, and we're just going to go down to VMware vSphere Update Manager and we'll click Install. We'll click OK on English United States and the Update Manager will start. Now on this first screen, if you did previously have Update Manager installed, you will see that it has detected a previous installation and will say if you proceed you will be upgrading to version 5.1. However, because this is a fresh installation, it does not say that, so I'm just going to go ahead and click Next. Next on the patent agreement and accept the license agreement and click Next. Now I'm going to deselect this download updates from default sources immediately after installation. So I'm going to untick this and I'll click Next. And in this window here, it's asking us for our vCenter server information. So as you can see here, it's the IP address. It's pre-populated with my vCenter server address. We're using port 80 as HTTP port, and in the username field I'm going to type in an admin account that has access to vCenter. So with that, I'll type in my vCenter service account and my password, and I'll click next. Now here it's asking us for our database information. You have two options. The installer can install a Microsoft SQL Server 2008 R2 Express instance for this database, or we can use an existing supported database. So this is the option that we want to select. And from data source name, we want to drop this down and select our data source we created earlier, which is VMware_UM. And with that, we'll click next. We don't have any additional database configuration information, so we'll click next. By default, our SQL Server database that we've created is set to full recovery model. So if you're not sure what this means, just check out this KB article from VMware. It's article 1001046, and decide if you want to use full recovery model or simple recovery model. So I'm just going to leave it as full recovery for this demonstration, and I'll click OK. Now I'm presented with the ports that Update Manager are going to be using. So like we've done with the rest of the installations, we'll take a print screen of this screen. We'll go into WordPad, save our screenshot onto the desktop. And we'll minimize that, and we'll click next. We'll be installing into the default locations for the installation and for the downloading patches. But what I do recommend that you do for production is actually create a new drive, say D drive, and store your updates on this. Don't install them on your C drive, because if the VMware patches continuously download and fill up your C drive, your server will potentially crash. So just for this demonstration, I'm just going to be leaving them on the default installation directories, but once again, I highly recommend installing your downloading patches folder onto a separate drive. Now I'm going to click next. Now I've only got 10 gig free on my C drive. So as you can see here, it pops up with a warning saying that the drive is less than 120 gig, and to use the sizing estimator on the VMware website to figure out potentially how much drive space we're going to need for our updates. I'm not too concerned about that in the lab, so I'm going to click OK. And now I'm going to click install, and our installation will begin. The Update Manager installation has completed successfully. So I'm going to click finish. I'm going to close out of my vCenter installer here, and I'm going to launch my vSphere client. I'm going to log into vSphere as administrator with my password. And as you can see on the left hand side here, my ESXi host is currently offline, and that's just because I don't have it powered on at this stage. But what we need to do with our Update Manager is click on the plugins menu here and click Manage Plugins. So as you can see in available plugins, we have our vSphere Update Manager extension. So on any computer that you have your vSphere client on, you'll have to do this to be able to use Update Manager, and that is just simply clicking download and install to install the extension. So I'm going to click this now, and we're just going to run through a very quick installation wizard, which is very basic. Click OK, click next, next, accept the license agreement, next. The installation wizard has detected that the vSphere client is installed under this directory, and therefore it explains that the Update Manager client will also be installed under that directory in a folder called Update Manager 5.1. So I'm going to click install, and the client will begin its installation. It's very quick. As you can see, it's completed already. So I'm going to click finish. And we're presented with an SSL certificate security warning here. I'm going to click install this certificate and do not display any security warnings for VM VC1, which is my vCenter server. and I'll click ignore. So once I do that, I won't be prompted with this security warning anymore for this SSL certificate. And as you can see here, the vSphere Update Manager extension is now under installed plugins and is enabled. So I'm going to click close, and I'll click inventory, solutions and applications, and go down to Update Manager. Now that we're in Update Manager, I'm just going to switch over to my ESXi server and power it up. So while we're waiting for our ESXi server to power up, I'll flick back over to our vCenter server and into Update Manager. Now, first step that we want to do to upgrade our ESXi server to version 5.1 is just click on the ESXi Images tab here. And we're going to click on Import ESXi Image. Now, in this window, we want to click on Browse and browse across to our ESXi 5.1 image ISO file. This is the name of the ISO file that I'm using here. So I'm just going to click Open and click Next. I'll accept the certificate, ignore. The image will get uploaded into Update Manager. Now the file's successfully uploaded, I'll click Next. And it's prompted me to create a new baseline. Later on I'll show you how to attach the baseline to the host, scan the host, and install the update. So for now, we're just going to be calling this ESXi 5.1 upgrade, and I'll click Finish. If we click on our baselines and groups, we can see here that our baseline we just created is populated under baselines ESXi 5.1 upgrade. So now that we've done all that, I'm going to jump across into my hosts, and we can see now that our host is up and powered on. And I'm going to go all the way over to the right hand side here and click on Update Manager. So when I click on Update Manager, I get a few options here: Scan, Attach, Help, and Admin View. I'm going to click Attach, and I want to attach my ESXi 5.1 upgrade baseline. So I'll tick that and I'll click Attach. So now that our baseline's attached to our host, I want to run a scan, and we want to see if our host is compliant or not. By this, I mean, is our host running 5.1 already, or is it running another version? We know that it's running 5.0, but we're going to run the scan anyway. And I'm going to untick patches and extensions and just click on upgrades and click scan. As you can see down the bottom here in the status, it's going through the scan process. And the scan process has now come back and told us that our host is non-compliant here. So this means that our 5.1 is not installed on our host, which is what we expected to see. Now our next step is to click on Remediate. So Remediate means that it's basically going to go ahead and upgrade our host to ESXi 5.1. So I'm going to click Remediate, and you can see here we've got our baseline, our host. I'll click Next. We'll accept the end user license agreement and click Next. So there's just a warning message at the top of the screen here saying that in case of an unsuccessful upgrade from ESXi.x or ESXi 5 to ESXi 5.1, you cannot roll back to your previous versions. There's also an option here to remove any third-party software that has been installed on ESXi 4 or 5 that is not compatible with 5.1. I know I don't have any third-party software installed on my ESXi 5 host at the moment, so I'm just going to leave that unticked, and I'll click Next. Now here in this screen, what we can do is we can actually schedule the task to run at a specific time and date, or we can run it immediately. So I want to run it immediately, and I might just give it a task description of upgrade host to ESXi 5.1 and click Next. Now in this screen, it just warns us that the host might need to be put into maintenance mode, and therefore what do you want to do with the virtual machines that are running on the current host? So we have a few options for the power state. If I drop that down, we can we can select power off virtual machines, suspend virtual machines, or do not change the VM power state. We definitely know that the host is going to be rebooted and put into maintenance mode. So once it gets put into maintenance mode, depending if you have a cluster or you're just having standalone host, if you have a standalone host, I would strongly suggest to go through and manually power off all your virtual machines. However, you can select here to power off the virtual machines, suspend it, or do not change the VM power state here. But just to have more control when you want to power off the virtual machines, I would go and do it manually myself. If you have a cluster, however, once it gets put into maintenance mode, the virtual machines will be vMotioned off onto the host that is not in maintenance mode. So in that case, I would select do not change VM power state. I know that all my virtual machines are shut down on this host, so I'm just going to select do not change VM power state. You also have the option to disable any removable media devices connected to the virtual machines on the host, and some retry options in case there was some failures during the upgrade. So I'm happy with these settings and I'm going to click next. As you can see here under upgrades, our ESXi 5.1 upgrade baseline is going to be applied to our host, and the host it's going to be applied to is VM ESXi 1. So once I click finish, the upgrade will begin, and let's go and see that now. So as we can see at the bottom here, the remediate entity task has begun, and we can see that it's 7% through at the moment. And here we go, we can see that our host has just entered maintenance mode now. And the tasks you can see here, enter maintenance mode. I've just switched over to my ESXi host, and as you can see it's now at version 5.1, and you can see that it's actually going through the upgrade process and doing a few more things in the background here. So we'll continue with this, and we'll come back once it's fully at 5.1 and start it up. So I'm going to accelerate the video a little bit just so that we don't bore you to death with looking at the same screen. And we'll come back once the host is fully upgraded to 5.1. So the system's finished upgrading now. So just prompt us here to press enter to reboot the system. So I'm going to press enter. And our ESXi 5.1 upgrade has been completed. As you can see here, we have ESXi 5.1, build version 799.733. Everything's up, host, IP address, system looks happy. I'm just going to jump into my vCenter server, and we'll see that it's going to be connecting in shortly. And there we go, our host is connecting up. It's exited maintenance mode. And our ESXi 5.1 upgrade task is just finishing off. The task's completed now. As you can see up on the right hand corner here, under attached baselines, our ESXi 5.1 upgrade baseline is now compliant. We have one host compliant, which is our VM ESXi 1 host. Now that completes the 4-part series of the vSphere 5.1 upgrade tutorial series. I really hope that you've enjoyed this and hope that you have used it in your practices, whether it be in the lab or out in production. If you have any questions whatsoever on this process, please leave a comment or post a question into my forums on www.sysadmintutorials.com/forums, and just post under the VMware section. Just create a new thread there and I'll be happy to answer any questions. So thank you once again for watching, and we'll see you in our next video.